Okay, bye. Hey guys, welcome back to the vlog channel and another episode of Good Soup. It's kind of been a while since I've done one of these, but it's such a gloomy and rainy and haily week, and I have been violently craving one of my favorite Filipino dishes, soup dishes. It's called sinigang, and it's a tamarind and pork based soupy dish. Now, this dish can also be made with no meat. It can be made with fish. You can really customize it to what you want, but the dish we're going to be making today is pork. I actually don't eat a lot of pork, and I can't stomach a lot of pork dishes. The pork has to be cooked a very, very specific way. The texture has to be a very specific way too, or else I can't eat it. So this is one of the very rare dishes where I actually enjoy eating the pork. It doesn't give me any like sort of gross feelings after, or like I don't feel sick. The way that I'm gonna be cooking it is just on the stove, and I sort of like to make my broth and make my sinigang over a few hours rather than just throwing it in the hot pot. But if you are, not the hot pot, the what is that called? What's that called? Instant pot? Instant pot? Is that what it's called? How come it sounds weird? Yeah, you can also instant pot it if you are just looking for like a quick way to cook the meat, but I just kind of like to do like a slow cook throughout the day. And just a warning, I will be showing raw meat in this video. I will throw a timestamp up here to show you where to fast forward to when the meat is like no longer in its raw form. But of course you're gonna miss some of the steps beforehand, but I just wanted to put it out there if you are squeamish with raw meat. Before I can make any meal, I have to have my bevy. So I'm going with the lemon black tea water flavor enhancer. I've tried a few so far because my husband and I are trying to not buy so many bubblies because it will literally bankrupt us. And I'm actually liking a lot of these so far, surprisingly. I still will eventually get, I think, a soda stream, but not anytime soon because we just spent a lot of money on home stuff, and yeah. I actually really enjoy that one. I think I grabbed everything that I need. I'm going to be using a package of pork back ribs. You can use, I don't know, whatever part of the pork you like, but I usually like something with the bone. Oxtail is my favorite, but it's very expensive, so I can't afford it. But if you are wanting the full sinigang experience and you're just gonna splurge one time to like try and make it really, really good, I highly, highly, highly recommend getting pork ribs and then also oxtail, because oxtail is just, it's next level. But it's super expensive, so we're not doing that today. In terms of the veggies, I grabbed a bundle of spinach, green beans, half of a daikon, which is just a white radish, some jalapeno peppers, a Chinese eggplant, some okra, and it's very unfortunate, but the store did not have baby bok choy or any kind of bok choy, which is what this dish calls for. So instead I'm gonna be using Napa cabbage because I just want something leafy in there to eat with the meat, and the spinach really just like turns into nothing, so that wouldn't be enough. Before we start prepping all of the veggies, the first thing I'm gonna do is throw this into a pot of boiling water just to clean it and get as much scum off of the meat as possible. So I'm gonna be boiling this in a separate pot, and then I'm gonna start boiling a pot of water. Keep in mind that the portions that I'm using in this video is for like a week's worth of food. I find it very, very hard to make this dish as like a one-time dinner or something. Like you sort of always have to make it in like a big batch because of, I don't know. I've just never successfully been able to make like a small batch of sinigang. It's always just like a huge pot that lasts for a really long time. First thing I'm gonna do is prep the vegetables. So the spinach has been washed, This has been washed, eggplant, okra. It's just the cabbage and the green beans that I need to wash down. So I'm just gonna cut the booty off of this Napa cabbage. And this is probably how much I'm gonna use. And I'm going to cut them even more. Pudge is gonna be probably barking in the background because I locked him in the bedroom. He's just so crazy right now. So as you can see, can you see? Can you see? There's like so many things on my screen. Everyone collectively ignore Pudge. So I slice it in half and then slice it in half again. But please get bok choy, don't do cabbage. It's not bad with cabbage. I've done this one time before, but it definitely changes the taste of the broth, and I don't know, I just don't like it as much as bok choy. It's just the next best thing. And then with the rest of this cabbage, I will probably attempt to make maybe kimchi or something. I really don't know how to make a ton of Filipino dishes. I think really the only things that I can make are obviously sinigang, adobo. I can make, it's so easy, just like arroz caldo, which is basically just like a chicken rice porridge dish. What else can I make? That's it. We had a lot of Filipino food growing up, but we also had a lot of, I will say, American food, and then also Vietnamese and Mexican food because of where we grew up. So it's not like, I don't know, I would say that I'm very disconnected from Filipino culture and stuff. That's just not what I grew up with, but I am glad that I at least know how to make the one dish that I really, really love. And then I'm just gonna soak it in water and get them all clean, and I'll throw these in there too. And my freaking stove keeps making that clicking sound. I'm also going to be cutting my eggplant. I don't even know who it is. I'm gonna just slice it down the center, long ways, and then slice it long ways again, and then chop them like this so that they're this shape. Doesn't really matter, it's just what I've always done. Okra, I leave everything. I don't remove any of this. Same with the spinach. I'm just gonna throw it in basically like this. I might chop them in half, but I won't do that till later. So now I'm going to grab my meat cutting board so I can cut my pork. Wait, I gotta cut my daikon. I forgot. So with the radish, I just skin it. You actually could put in more daikon than this. I thought I had a bigger piece left at home because I used half of it to make kimchi. But I didn't realize I only had a small little piece left. Dry end off. So I cut my daikon this way because this is how my mom did it, and it's just, I don't know, it's how I like it now. So you cut it long ways, and then you just cut it again short ways so that you have this shape. Oh, it's blending in with my shirt. So yeah, that's just how I cut my radish. There's really not a lot of taste to the radish. It does flavor the broth a tiny bit, but it's more for a texture, in my opinion. Okay, now I can do my meat. I'm gonna be cleaning up as I go here because I truly cannot be overwhelmed with mess while I cook, or I get really, really flustered. I really hate handling meat. I really do. Hate it a lot. So they recommend on pork back ribs, or just pork ribs in general, that you remove that like thin membrane on the back, but I just leave it, and so does my mom. So I just stopped doing that because honestly it was a pain in the ass. So I'm gonna just slice these rib by rib individually before I toss it in the water. And I desperately need a new knife. Mine is so dull. I think my mom also said that you can get, what is it, like pork knuckle to add more flavor for the broth, but I just do the pork ribs. Arms are burning. All right, I'm gonna tell you right now that this one package of meat is probably only gonna be enough for 2 meals for my husband because he eats a lot. The nice thing about this dish though is that if you do end up going through all the meat and you still have a lot of veggies left and a lot of broth left, you can always buy another package of meat and then just throw it in the Instant Pot to get it tender, and then just throw it back into the broth, and it's pretty much the same. I do it all the time. So now we're gonna pop over to the stove and get these in water. So this is why you want to do a first boil, because all of this stuff that you see floating at the top, you do not want that in your broth. So I'm going to let this boil a little bit longer, and then I'm going to put it into a strainer and give it a rinse. So before this actually starts boiling, I'm going to get the meat into the water. I'm gonna bring this pot to a boil and then clean off anything that rises to the surface once it gets boiling. Just gonna give this a little mix to let anything float up. But I feel like I got it pretty clean in that first boil and rinse. Depending on like the kind of meat that you're using, you're gonna have more or less scum, especially if there's like more fat on the meat that you're using. But I have a bowl of water here, and I've got this device, which is a strainer with a ladle strainer. And I just go on the surface of the water and I just start cleaning it up. This is the part where the long wait is. If you're not going to be using an instant pot, I'm going to bring it back down to not to low heat and not quite medium, but sort of in between. You don't want it to really be boiling a lot, but you also don't just kind of want it sitting in warm water because you want the meat to get really tender. I'm not going to be adding any of my tamarind seasoning yet, but I am going to be adding a little bit of low sodium soy sauce. And I'm going to set a timer for about 2 hours. I'm going to keep it covered and we'll see how tender it is in 2 hours. I'm just going to check on the meat. I just want to know how soft it is. Typically, I like my meat to literally fall off the bone, and we are pretty much there now. Oh, definitely there now. So we can move on to the next step. So you can go two ways. You can get the Mamacita's brand, which is my favorite, or you can get the Knorr brand. I prefer this. For this big of a pot, I'm gonna use this entire thing and probably even some of this, just depending how sour you want the soup. This part you want to be very careful because you do not want these jalapenos to break. They're a bit soft because they were frozen before, so what I'm going to do is boil these in a separate pan or pot with the broth. I'm going to add my okra. Also going to add the daikon radish. Green beans, eggplant, and then I'm gonna let this boil for maybe about 15 minutes. And then I'm gonna add my cabbage and my spinach. I'm just gonna steal some of this broth. Oh my word. And then I'm gonna add my probably 2 jalapenos. I did a broth taste test and I'm gonna need more of this. You basically want to cook the okra until it's really, really soft, unless you like your okra firm, but I've always had the okra super soft with this dish. Like no matter who cooked it, it was always soft, so that's kind of what I've been used to. And then along with adding more of the tamarind powder, I'm also going to be adding some fish sauce and Maggi seasoning. If you have never seen this before, this is what Maggi is. You can use it for so many things. Honestly, even if you're not cooking like Asian dishes at home, this just makes everything so delicious. So try and find some if you can. 3 crabs is my favorite fish sauce. I'm not gonna add it just yet. I add it at the very, very end when the stove is off because I don't want my whole house smelling of fish sauce. So yeah, I'm gonna let this sit for a few more minutes longer and let the okra soften up. The okra is not quite done yet, but I'm gonna go ahead and start adding some of the cabbage. It's getting pretty packed in here and I still have to add some spinach, so I'm not gonna add all of the cabbage right away. I can always add it every time I reboil this broth. And then I'm gonna add the spinach too. This stuff is just going to melt into nothing. I'm gonna let this simmer a little bit and then we're gonna go over here to the jalapenos. You basically want to boil it until it becomes deflated like this because you want it to pull easily apart and you want it to be really soft. So we're not quite there yet. Like this one looks really firm still. You want it to deflate even more. And this is one reason why I suggest you put it in a separate pot, because a lot of the times, if you're not super careful in watching it, it'll explode in the broth and then it's gonna be way too spicy. So this next step is completely optional. I feel like fish sauce is very much an acquired taste, but if you do enjoy fish sauce, what you're gonna do is take an extra bowl. You're gonna put a little bit of broth in there. And then for this much broth, I'm gonna add about a tablespoon of fish sauce, maybe a little bit more, tablespoon and a half. Now I'm very, very sad about this, but I forgot my lemon juice. But if you have lemon or even lime, you can just add like a squeeze of it into here just to like give it a little bit more acidity and sourness. And then you're gonna take your jalapeno, cut it in half, and again in another half, and I'm just going to add it to the fish sauce. I've got about 5 minutes left of cooking this until it should be done, and I'm going to do about a ladleful of fish sauce. And again, I prefer my sinigang to be really, really sour, but also have a little bit of that saltiness. So you can add fish sauce to taste, add the tamarind powder to taste. Everything really should be to like what you prefer. So to some people, one ladleful for this size pot would probably not be enough, but for me, it's enough considering I also have some on the side. Here is the finished meal. Everything is smelling really good, tastes exactly how I want it to taste, but I'm gonna show you how I eat it. So I've got some rice here, and what I always do is I put everything separate, rice, the soup, and then the fish sauce with the jalapeno. So I always start by adding some of the broth to the rice first. And each bite's gonna look different. Obviously, I'm not gonna be able to get like the perfect bite with every single piece in it, but I will always take a little bit of the meat. And for me, I like when the meat just like falls apart like this. I don't like it when it's too chewy or too hard. It's just not an enjoyable experience for me. So I'm adding some meat. I'm going to cut a little piece of this radish, which is actually a little bit hard still. I probably could have boiled the radish for a little bit longer. I'm gonna add some spinach and then maybe a little bit of the okra, and I'll put it like that. And then I'm also gonna take a little piece of this jalapeno and put it on top, and then take some of that fish sauce and just put it over it. And that is my perfect bite. This is my comfort food. I could eat this every single day of the week, no matter if it's cold or not. Hands down, one of my favorite meals ever. I do still have the stove on because I want to boil everything even softer. I mean, this okra is fine, but I prefer it to be a little mushier, as well as the daikon. The radish, I want it to be way softer than what it is right now. So maybe another like 10-15 minutes on the stove will soften it up by a lot. I'm gonna try some of this cabbage. So good. You wanna come say bye? Oh, big stretches, big stretches. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Good Soup. I know it's a lot different than the other 2 soup recipes that I put up. It's a little bit more complicated, a lot more work that goes into it. Again, you can honestly just like throw this into the Instant Pot and call it a day, but I just prefer to like do a slow cook and really put a lot of love into it. I don't know if this is too adventurous for some people. I don't know if you're gonna try it, but if you do try it, I would love to know if you liked it. If you make sinigang and you have variations of it and like different things that you add or like different ingredients that you add, I'd also love to know what those are. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna finish this bowl of soup before it gets cold. But thank you guys for watching another vlog, and we hope to see you in the next one.